Let's bring in RBC Capital Markets Global Head of Commodity Strategy and a CNBC contributor, Helima Croft. I'm going to start this with a very basic question here. When I hear $150 a barrel, at what level do prices actually become demand destroyers?
I mean, look, do we see momentum to take this to 100? Sure. I mean, one of the problems right now in the oil market is you would say, look, at these high levels, refineries are simply going to be uneconomic to run crude. But we actually have a shortage of refined products. So even at these higher levels, refineries are going to run the crude. The math works. If you look at the prices of distillates, you look at heating oil, you look at diesel, those prices have risen even faster than crude because of the refinery capacity constraints that we're facing.
Okay, so $100 sounds likely to you. Is that what you're telling me? But what about higher than that?
I mean, higher than that, we'd have to look to, do we see further supply disruptions? What does it look like in terms of demand? Do we completely fade every China story? Do we basically say, I'm not going to be concerned about higher rates? So again, I think 100, there's momentum to 100. Getting beyond that, we'll have to see. And it's going to be very important to watch what happens. We have significant OPEC cuts in the market. We have this million-barrel Saudi unilateral cut they've extended through the end of the year. But I interviewed the Saudi oil minister this week in Calgary, and he said, we're extending to the end of the year, but we will be reviewing every month, and we can go in either direction. So I'm waiting to see what happens with these big U.S.-Saudi diplomatic talks for a comprehensive deal. Is energy potentially part of the package?
Okay, Helima, what do you think? What about natural gas, especially as we head into colder temperatures and Russia's still doing its thing?
I mean, this is the big concern, John. I mean, we had a mild winter last year. We also had abundant supplies from the U.S. LNG into Europe, also mild weather in Asia, so they were not bidding away cargoes. It is really a weather story. What does winter look like? And so in a cold winter scenario, of course, we'd be concerned, and we'd be concerned about the Russian weaponization strategy. Again, what we're seeing this week is on the product side. But again, there is real concern about tightness in these diesel markets. What does it mean if Russia keeps these supplies off for a significant period of time?
So how do investors, how are they playing that? What are you seeing in the pricing for natural gas?
I mean, I think right now what everyone is in is wait and see mode. When it comes to nat gas, what does winter hold for us? And if we think about oil prices, again, I think a lot of concern or activity is going to be around what happens with these OPEC production cuts as we get out to year end. Are they going to be extended, the unilateral cuts? Do they fade out? So I think people are going to be watching a lot what happens in Vienna come year end.
All right, I need to go back to crude and specifically the Saudis.
Yeah.
I mean, oil is always part of the geopolitical consternations, if you will. You had that Washington Post write-up of a classified document saying that the Saudis were essentially going to weaponize oil in the tense relationship between, with the U.S. We know they're raising money and splashing a lot of it around in the sports world as well. I just wonder, are the cuts that we're seeing fundamental that are coming out of Saudi right now, or is it something else?
I remember we were on in June right after the OPEC production cuts. I came back in July, and the Saudis were really clear. There was a lot of macro concerns in the market. Think where oil was in June. Everyone was talking about an armada of Russian oil into Asia. They talked about, demand concerns. And the Saudis were really clear. They were going to do what they thought was necessary to bring this market back into balance. And again, I think it's very interesting what the Saudi oil minister said this week in in Calgary. They are reviewing this unilateral cut every month. And so I would pay very close attention. The Saudi Crown Prince just gave this big interview this week. I'd pay very close attention to what is happening in these broader diplomatic talks with Washington. Is energy part of the equation? Could we see additional barrels as part of a grand bargain between Washington and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia?